All right, you're recording and streaming. So I'll hand it over to you, Tess.
All right, thank you very much, Colby. I call this meeting to order. Let's make sure I'm the host. Okay, now we're getting that feedback again. What the heck is that? Okay, you just muted yourself, Colby. Oh, I guess he's leaving. All right. So if there's feedback at any time, let me know, but it was rather extraordinary. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. My name is Tess Taylor, and I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee of the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. Welcome to everybody. Roll. Kelly Cole. Is that Kelly calling in by way of phone? By the way, for those members of the public who are calling in, if you have a question, you may raise your hand on the phone by dialing *9. All right. So I'm assuming that's a member of the public. So Kelly Cole is absent. Sean Besharati.
Present.
Catherine Hatton.
Here.
Ren Blight is absent, and I am here. Tess Taylor, excellent. We have quorum, congratulations. So 6:32, and we have 2 members of the public in attendance. And for those members of the public who are here for the first time, you will have an opportunity to comment on any agenda item. And we'll get to public comment in a moment. First order of business to review, and item number 2, review and approve committee minutes. Materials are available at gtlnc.org under committee meeting documents. Motion to approve the GTLNC October 6th, 2022 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes. Do I have a first?
Sean.
Sean, thank you. Do I have a second?
Catherine, second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion, questions, or comments on the minutes from members?
One quick clarification. For the votes, we use AB, I think, to mean absent, but that can be a little bit confusing with abstain as A. There is something called excused, which is, I think, what it probably is supposed to be.
So what would you suggest replacing, using the word excused to replace absent?
So yeah, the key is yes, no, abstain, recuse.
Yeah, I knew that as well. Yeah, I have no problem with that. Although, don't we have a different definition between excused and absent? Somebody who's excused has an excuse, whereas absent is not the case.
Well, above in the key, it says Y is yes, N is no, A is abstain, R is recusal, I is ineligible, and E is excused. So if anything, take the B away and just make it A based on the key above.
Right.
A would be abstain, AB is absent, and I think excused is meant to be that, as in like they did not vote. Maybe we need to update the key, and that's a larger issue of like.
Okay. But you know what? I'm going to plug in my headphones because I'm getting a lot of buzz here.
No problem.
That's better. Sean, could you speak for a moment?
Sure. Test 1 2 1 2.
That is much better for me anyway. So forgive me, but is there not a different definition that distinguishes absent from excused?
I mean, technically, according to our bylaws, there is no distinction. If you're absent, you're absent. There's not an excused version.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah.
I have no problem with that. Let's do it.
Just to make it clear, because I think when you're just looking at votes and you see AB, you think abstain.
Right.
Even though the key says A, but then there's nothing that explains what AB is in the vote key.
Okay, so then AB, where is the vote key? AB.
Just above 7 on page 2.
Right.
And just above 3 on page 1.
Okay, we're looking at the minutes, not the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the minutes.
Okay, so A absent. Okay, so add absent. Or I understand what you're saying. Okay, I'll make that change.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, excellent. Any other comments? Do we have comments from members of the public? If so, press *9 and raise your hand. Seeing none, hearing none, let's take it to a vote. As amended, substituting or clarifying abstain. Motion is approved, the GTLNC.
No, hang on, Tess. I guess I'm a little confused on the meeting minutes at the top of page 2. For motion B, it looks like we voted yes on that draft letter request for action.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second, Catherine.
Yes to table it.
Catherine, let me just find this. Hold on. Okay, motion B on page.
It starts on
Page
It
1
starts
and
on
goes
page
to,
1.
and then goes to page 2. All right. Yes, you're right. We voted to table it. Okay, so that needs to be clarified.
Yeah,
Okay.
like it says it there, but I feel like you need to move that out because it is a motion to table. So it needs to be pulled out of the just like italicized because it looks like motion B up above and then vote on motion B, whereas it's really a vote to table.
So then really okay, I'll just clarify that. Vote to table 400. Okay. Got it. I'll make that more clear. All right.
would it be beneficial to highlight that red in red?
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
To bold the vote to table, like, and make that a separate line. It was
okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I will adjust accordingly. Thank you. So with those two amendments, I'll reread the motion. Approve the GTLNC October 6th, 2022 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes as amended. Do I have a first?
Sean?
Or, no, sorry, we vote. Sorry. Catherine, how do you vote?
abstain.
Sean?
Yay.
Tess is a yes. And motion carries. All right. Thank you. Next up, we have public comment on non-agenda items within the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council's jurisdiction. We have 2 minutes per speaker, which can be extended at the discretion of the chair. If we have thousands of people, it tends to be shorter. Do we have any comments, public comments from the 2 members of the public in attendance? All right, seeing none, hearing none, we go to the next item. Number 4, committee member news and announcements. Any news and announcements? Sean, Catherine.
No, my news is only for public safety. So
Okay.
we'll touch base on that on Monday.
Catherine?
No.
Okay. This is just sort of a fun item. We had our first ever Halloween dog costume parade on Sunday. We had over 150 people, 40 dogs roughly, and coverage from NBC News Channel 9, which was terrific. So an annual tradition has been launched. That's pretty fun. And that is my only announcement there. So moving on to item number 5, legislation of possible interest to the committee. And this relates to an item that a stakeholder wished to have agendized. This is relating to SB 1338, Community Assistance, Recovery and Empowerment Act, the CARE Act court program, which establishes a new judicial branch providing court-ordered care to the unhoused and severely mentally ill. Now, unless that person is the person phoning in 818, I believe that the stakeholder who wished this to be agendized is not present, in which case we can certainly take comments, but I would vote, or I would table this or continue it at the next meeting. Any questions? Is that our stakeholder on the phone? If it's you, you can dial *9. All right, I don't think it is. So Sean and Catherine, did you have any thoughts or comments on this?
I didn't get a chance to get all the way through it, so I'd like to maybe get a little bit more detail on it. I'd say we table it for the next meeting. And then
Okay.
hopefully we can reach out to the stakeholder that brought this to our attention. So that we
Yeah,
can maybe
well, you
get a little
can,
bit-
you can read the bill at the link in the agenda. Catherine, any thoughts?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so let's continue this until our next meeting, okay? And, very good. So, excellent. So moving on to item number 6, discussion and,
Tess,
yes,
we technically aren't able to move on.
Okay.
You've put times on each of these items, and so you can't start something earlier than the time it was listed at. So we've been through 5, maybe 2, 2, and 5.
okay,
So we've got to wait another moment.
okay, so, but those are approximate times.
Yeah,
not-
but it's part of our training that if you put times in the minute or in the agenda, you can't start something earlier than the time it was listed because someone might be using that agenda to decide when to tune in.
I see,
So
and
I
that
would
was,
recommend removing the times from the agenda to avoid that issue.
okay. And that was in which training? Do you recall? I don't remember it. I'm not saying it didn't occur, but I'd like to know if you know more specifically.
It was, I don't think it was like a video training session. I think it was information about how to produce agendas. And so it's a document
Okay,
that I think we got sent at some point. I don't have my GTLNC email anymore, so I can't go find that email.
okay, but it came from Dunn.
Yeah.
All right, so in that case, what would you like to do?
I mean, now that we've talked about it, we've made it past the 14 minutes. So
Okay, I'll just remove that from future agendas. I just,
yeah,
or I will put in approximately, but maybe I'll just take it out
you have to
altogether.
just remove it. You can't say approximately and get
Okay.
around it.
All right, well, I understand the attempt to give people an opportunity to tune in, so that's fair. All right, now that we have used up that time, let us move to item number 6, discussion and possible vote. A motion. The Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council supports the motion introduced by CD4 Council Member Nithya Raman to adopt the Los Angeles Ethics Commission's proposed reforms to the city's lobbying laws and to revise such laws to provide greater transparency as set forth in Council File number 22-0560. This motion will be submitted as a community impact statement to that file, CF 22-0560. Do I have a first?
Catherine first.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sean, sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. All right, so I think this speaks for itself. If you had a chance to read the council file linked in the agenda, it looks like we have a question from Jonathan Gregory. But let's, any comments from the committee first, Sean and Catherine?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
Catherine?
No.
All right. Jonathan, go ahead.
Hi, you all. My hand was up back while you were talking about the core and the issue, the previous issue. So do you want to go back there now, or do you want to finish up what you're doing? It had just, if you wouldn't mind to, if you know this, having to do with core, what is that case number? What's the time frame? What do we know about it being on any schedule, and what was the concern of the stakeholder? They weren't.
Are you talking about CARE?
CARE, sorry, CARE.
Okay.
What is the date? Like, what's happening at City Council with that? That gives it a case number.
That is actually a
Senate bill.
What do you call it? That's a Senate bill in the state legislature, and it has passed. All right, so and you can read the.
I read it, but what Why is it on the agenda? In other words, what is hopeful or what isn't hopeful?
I don't believe there's any action that can be taken with respect to the legislation itself. I believe the stakeholder had some interest in what happens now that this bill has been passed and wanted to discuss it. That's all this is. That's all I have from the stakeholder.
Okay.
Who I thought would be present, and I think it is a very important thing to discover and to discuss, because a lot of these bills, these legislation may be well-intended but have unintended consequences. And I was relying upon that stakeholder to, bring forward any arguments or suggestions or discussion. I've glanced through the legislation, but I don't have any further comment right now.
What I would say as a comment of a stakeholder, now that I understand what the point was, when I read it, I was kind of surprised that so much fanfare was given something that really doesn't at all address the inability of this state, because it's a state law, to take someone into custody more than 3 days for, when a person is refusing any form of assistance, we're left at this current state of affairs where nobody can do anything. And that defaults back to state law, I read. So until the state changes its law, it's all pathetic. In other words, when a person is mentally ill or deranged or on drugs, there's only a small possibility that they're going to step forward and be hungry for assistance. There has to be a different form for addressing it. But anyways, we can't solve the problem.
Well, what I would like to do is bring Jason Maruka on from District 5 Supervisor Barger's district, because she and her office have taken up this issue to try to get a waiver of that 1965 law that makes it so impossible, basically, to there are several aspects to it. There's a limitation placed on the number of beds in a facility, and there are also rules guiding who can be committed and how, and it's just very, very difficult. That the fear was, when the laws were passed, that we didn't want to have another one flew over the cuckoo's nest scenario. But now it's sort of gone in the other direction. And now that there's so much evidence of severe mental health on the streets, hands are tied because of these laws. But we can dig into that more deeply. And I do want to bring on Jason Maruka, who can tell us what's going on and what we can do to support those initiatives. So.
Okay, thanks. I think it's a really important thing. And the reason I think so is because it seems from all the reporting from the councilman's office, the written reporting, that we're a community that's rich with unsheltered people who refuse assistance. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. I'll lower your hand. Okay, very good. So if there's no discussion on this item number.
I think I was looking at the wrong one.
Okay.
We already passed a CIS for this.
It's
in the council file. Like if you go to the council file, there's a CIS by Greater Toluca Lake.
Well, this is one to support. Nithya Raman has come forward since we filed that CIS. And I felt that it would be good to support her on this. That's what this is. And you are correct, Catherine. So I don't see any reason why we can't or shouldn't.
Well,
unless you feel differently.
I mean, we already have a CIS about this council file number. We already are supporting it.
Well, but
we did that last month. What is the change then that we are changing our position?
We're not changing our position. We're simply supporting her, and she's taken this up. That's what this is. And I feel strongly that when a council member does something we oppose or approve, that we should say so.
Right. I'm saying we already said that we support her.
Well, no, she hadn't come out with this. I don't believe she was leading the charge at that point. I mean, she's come out with a motion. I could be wrong, but I think this has happened since we filed our CIS.
I don't believe that's so.
Well, I mean, we don't have to vote on it, but I thought it would be, let me see, because I was looking at a press release.
So is this a new motion or just the same motion that was already?
I see it as new.
Well, I'm okay. I have a quick question. So we already produced a CIS on 10/21 for this motion. This is a council file 22-0560, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we've already issued a CIS, what is our intent with this new action? That's the question. I'm sorry.
To support Nithya Raman. And that's it.
Is that a votable action? Because we can just simply, I mean, I don't, and please forgive me, I'm not sure.
No, that's okay. But we don't have to. I just think it's useful, it's helpful. We're making use of our voice to say we approve of this, we appreciate this, or we don't. That's all. And
how would we disseminate said vote? Would we put that in a letter of action, or would it just something that'd be agendized?
It seems like a CIS to me, but we can call it a letter of action if you like.
And so, and this may sound, it sounds silly. So maybe it's a CIS about the CIS. I mean, and I'm not being flippant. Please don't get me wrong.
No. I don't know.
I think we're all trying to understand the purpose of a second CIS on the same council file. Are we I think we need to have language that says we reiterate our position and support Nithya's proposal or something.
That would be great. I'll take that down.
Clear why we're submitting a second CIS on this.
And support Nithya Raman's proposal. I mean, that's perfect. Any thoughts, Sean?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that, for lack of better terms, this would be a CIS about the CIS.
Well, I mean, if you want, Catherine, letter of action CIS or what?
I think it can be a CIS. I just, because we've already submitted one, I want to make sure that we don't get into like some confusing situation.
Okay.
But I think maybe we.
All right. Well,
as long as we make it clear that we are standing by our previously submitted CIS from October 21st and are in support of Nithya Raman's motion.
Good.
That would make sense to me.
Yeah, because we can criticize people and we can show our appreciation, and I think we should do that whenever we can. All right. So then the suggested amendment language is the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council reiterates its position of our community impact statement filed on October 21st and supports Nithya Raman's councilmember Nithya Raman's proposal to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that sound fine?
Yeah, it's proposal specific to council file and then addressing council file number.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so yeah, it does. Okay. So the Greater Toluca Lake reiterates. Okay, rats with notes. Hold on. And let me just type it out and then I'll reread it to you guys. Okay, so it reiterates its support of
I think you should leave rats in there, by the way.
Yes, filed on October. And supports the motion introduced by CD4 Councilmember Nithya Raman to adopt, et cetera, and to advise. Okay, so that's really all we're doing. We're just saying the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council reiterates its support of the motion we filed on October 21st. Okay, hang on. I've got supports.
While you're thinking that, Catherine, in cases like this, is there anything that has been done in the past specific to this scenario? Is there something else that can be done? Is there?
No, I'm familiar with the opportunity to like change a position, but I don't know that we've ever reiterated a position and
Reaffirmed the
supported
position we've
a
already
new
supported?
action. Yeah, reaffirmed our position and supported new action.
Again,
in relation to the
reiterates
council file.
its support of the motion filed. Okay. We just use the word support twice, which annoys me. We need a better word. Reiterates its
Position in favor of.
okay, thank you. Favor of. Okay, here it is. All right, let me read it again as amended. Do we vote to amend first and then vote on do we vote first on the amendment language? I think we do.
Yeah,
here's-
Jonathan does have his hand up.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to mention in my reading, I found that what Tess is proposing is highly advocated for and by neighborhood councils to repetitively submit CISs as well as reissue them at different moments in the evolution of an issue or a subject or whatever. Since this is an evolution of it where Nithya Raman has stepped in, yeah, it's an appropriate time to either resubmit the same one with the new council case number, or if it's the same case number, you just resubmit it. So it becomes present in the files again. That's all.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jonathan. So here is the suggested amended language. All right. The Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council reiterates its position in favor of the motion we filed on October 21st, 2022 to support the motion introduced by CD4 Councilmember Nithya Raman to adopt the Los Angeles Ethics Commission's proposed reforms to the city's lobbying laws and to revise such laws to provide greater transparency as set forth in Council File number 22-0560. This motion will be submitted as a community impact statement to Council File 22-0560. Vote to approve the amended language. Sean?
Yes, sorry.
Catherine?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so that passes. So we voted to amend, and we actually just voted on the amended motion as well. All right, so I don't think we need to vote again unless you feel it's important.
Technically we do.
Okay.
But
Okay.
do we all agree?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
so vote
Done.
to amend. Okay, we vote to amend and vote on it. All right, good. Thank you.
For the record, yes.
All right.
Yes.
And then, so is that technically we vote to amend and then we vote on the amendment? Okay.
We vote on the amendment, then we vote on the amended motion.
Okay. And we unanimous. Unanimous. Very good. All right. Thank you very much.
You sure you don't need a recount on that?
I don't know. Check my numbers, Sean.
Yeah, right. Hey, I'm going to go with we're good.
Okay, so next up we have item number 7. And that is a motion. All right, item number 7, motion regarding the LA Ethics Commission recommendations to update the Los Angeles City Charter, the powers and responsibilities. Draft text of this motion is available at GTLNC.org and under meeting documents. The motion will be submitted as a community impact statement to the Charter Section 700 Ethics Reforms and Council File 2022-1232. Do I have a first?
Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Catherine? Have a
Sorry.
second?
I clicked mute or unmute like 3 times.
Okay,
Catch
thank you.
second.
Yeah, that's funny. If you click it in rapid succession, you just negate yourself.
Yep.
All right. Very good. Any questions on this? There was a draft created, you may have read, and this basically just strengthens the recommended changes.
And Krikorian backs this.
I beg your pardon?
Krikorian backed this particular.
Good. Very good. So, any questions from the public or comments? Seeing none, hearing none. Shall we take this to a vote? Why not? Let me read the motion. Let's see. Well, do you want me to read the motion? It's 1 page. The draft motion of
The motion from City Council?
no, the draft, let's see. Updating the LA Ethics recommendations to update the Los Angeles City Charter. The draft text of the motion is with your meeting documents, and I emailed it to everyone prior to the meeting. So it's a 1 page outline of 5 items to strengthen, including independent appointment, eligibility requirements, to raise the vote threshold for commissioner removal, increased maximum penalty, and raising the minimum budget. Did you see that, Catherine?
I don't think I got. Hang on.
Well, I sent it to your GTLNC email. When was it your email?
Let me, I haven't logged into that in a while. Let me see if I can still log in.
Yeah, the draft is it's large.
It's 1 page.
I mean,
yeah, it's also not on our website for some reason.
Well, I didn't get any bounce backs when I emailed them to you, so I assumed that your
it does still exist. Okay, hang on. I'm just gonna skim it for a moment. Yeah, I only saw. Yeah, I have no issues with that.
Okay. Any questions or comments from you, Sean?
Nope, I read this. I like it.
Good. Then let's move to a vote. So shall I read the entire thing, Catherine? I don't think it's.
I think you just read the agendized
The
item.
motion.
Okay,
not,
the motion.
Not the draft.
Okay. Okay. Our motion regarding the LA Ethics Commission recommendations to update the Los Angeles City Charter powers and responsibilities. Draft text of this motion is available at gtlnc.org under meeting documents. The motion to be submitted as a community impact statement to the Charter Section 700 Ethics Reforms and Council File 22-1232. How do you vote, Sean?
That's a yes.
Okay, Catherine.
I am a yes as well.
And I'm a yes, so motion carries. Glad to have that. Thank you very much. And let's just make sure, because I'm bouncing between documents here. Any questions or comments from members of the public? All right. Seeing none, hearing none. We move to item 8, request from a stakeholder to agendize this item, discussion of presence of nonprofit organizations in the community, including NoHo Home Alliance, St. Charles Borromeo, Harmony Church, and others, as well as benefits to and concerns of stakeholders. So this relates to charitable endeavors in and around neighborhoods. And I first came across this when I frequented some public parks more often and found that a lot of charitable organizations were dropping off food for the homeless population, which at that time was increasing significantly. And since I was in the park a lot walking my dog, I noticed this and I thought it was great until I began to notice the after effect. The unintended consequence is that there's just a lot that is left over and that, the public is left to deal with, and or the sanitation concerns of leftover food supplies and things like that. And I think what was attempted at the time was to try to direct more of these charitable endeavors to a certain center that was, within the neighborhood in order to keep the public parks more sanitary, because a lot of stuff was left over. And frankly, it attracts rats and problems, and a trash buildup is not desirable by any stretch. So that would be my personal experience. And I know that some organizations tend to attract more foot traffic than others. And do we have any comments from Catherine, Sean, members of the public?
Yeah, I can actually talk to this because this is something we brought up with public safety a while ago. I remember underneath the Lancashire underpass, one of the reasons I've noticed myself personally, people would pull up, open their trunk and hand up stuff while someone videotapes it. They were like taping it on their video. They were capturing video on their phone, like, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing. And that's one of the reasons that Officer Delbar kind of pointed out when they talked to the people that were underneath the Lancashire overpass. He indicated that there's people that come and drop stuff off constantly. Why would we leave? Because he asked, well, why specifically this underpass? He's like, we get food, we get money. There's a McDonald's right here. There's an APM right there. Why would we want to leave? And I think that, I think having them drop that stuff at those designated facilities would give them less opportunity to just sit in one place and have things brought to them versus having to, make the effort to go to these places. I think that, I had a problem with St. Charles. They would have their food giveaway, and then we would see, various stuff scattered around the streets. That's a little bit more localized, but if they're just doing it everywhere and they have the ability to drop the food wherever they want or wherever they see it, I think if we incentivize them by saying, look, if you do go to St. Charles, or if you do go to the No Home Alliance, these are where you can get these services. And coincidentally, this is also a place where we can then have people have an opportunity to talk to people so that there's other opportunities to help them or other ways to
I totally agree with you, Sean. And, the challenge is that you can't interfere with somebody's right to be charitable, but it does create unintended consequences and a lot and problems. And because I have led many, many, many neighborhood cleanups by now, we see the consequences of this directly: huge amounts of food, huge amounts of trash, and clearly some of it has, been dropped off. And we see this as well. So this is a problem. It's a problem for neighborhoods where these things build up, including in the area where I live. I know in the area where you live, Sean. And, as I said, we had a stakeholder who asked for this to be agendized. And I was happy to do so. So do we have any comments from, it looks like, Jonathan, you have your hand up. Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
At this point, what are we as a neighborhood council planning to do?
Well,
are we going to reach out to these entities? Are we going,
maybe the way I understood it?
What are we doing?
So maybe what I'm assuming that stakeholders maybe is not necessarily holding anyone's feet to the fire, but maybe strongly suggesting that we encourage your charitable donations, but it shouldn't be disseminated on the streets. You should find a location of your choice and then drop those donations at that specific designated place so that they can be disseminated accordingly and better monitored. in terms of keeping streets clean, keeping, from things spreading out. I don't know, maybe that's what the intention was. I mean, I certainly think that would be a good idea. But to Tess' point, I'm not trying to inhibit anyone from donating, but I would like the opportunity for it to maybe be a little bit more centralized, whichever.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is not somebody who's homeless. The problem are the impacts of things that are related to that, just enormous amounts of trash. And
right. And I understand the impact. My question, and what Sean, I think, was trying to answer, is we're talking about this as a problem, but
yes.
What is the next step for us? Are we going to reach out directly to people? Are we going to publish resources of where things should be dropped off instead? Like, what is the plan?
Okay, I do not have a plan. I was simply asked to agendize this, and I think it is a good thing to discuss. And for what it's worth, I have submitted now several times a list of homeless resources to
it
the
is on the
committee.
website.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Where is it on the website? Since I haven't.
It is under resources.
Excellent. All right. So we can certainly update that. Jonathan, you have your hand up.
Thanks. What I would like to say first is that what Sean is talking about is the predisposition of people in general, including you and me and the people who don't have shelter, to settle where they're most comfortable. Generally, that's what they do, whether their comfort is direct or it's indirect because it's proximate to people they want to be around or whatever. There's a reason for everything. The community is just besieged by social problems. Call it social problems. Drug addiction, homeless, unsheltered, filth, lack of facilities to put garbage in if you happen to have garbage, lack of regulation to prohibit people from giving out food or whatever they want to be charitable with, or stopping cars in certain areas of the street that pose a problem. So it's got all of these problems. And I think this is the place that a neighborhood can begin, a community can begin to ask the questions, why are these things happening here? When I asked the question, it was back in July. I saw all of this horrible stuff going on, and I said, well, who's in a position to do anything about this? Certainly it's the council member, the council member's office, it's the government, state, city, county, but it's also nonprofits. So I got in touch with some of the nonprofits in an effort to understand how much do they understand about what's going on in the community, and how willing are they to adapt some of their processes to some common sense approaches, like discussions, little chats with people, even if you don't write anything down, in order to trigger a dialogue about important things like respecting the community that you're in, little tads like that. Well, what I got back was really quite amazing, and I'd like to share that with you. I got back a letter from the director. Not only did the director make it perfectly clear to me that that director did not recognize the pictures taken in the very community the nonprofit was operating in as within the community. They had no idea where these pictures were taken. All were within 2,000 feet of the center of the nonprofit. The second thing that I'd like to call to your attention is when I started looking at the money, it was really hard to figure it out. And I happened to ask Lorraine Diaz and Tiffany, the people working from the councilman's office, oh, is the city funding this? Well, somehow the answer came through as, I meant the city government, as a resounding yes, but nobody wants to talk about it. So I don't really know where the money's coming from. Then I did some online research and I discovered that there was a need for this nonprofit that's supposed to offer meals and showers to those in our community, that they needed a director now who is going to be paid $65,000 to $85,000 a year. And I read the job wanted ad for this. So I started to say to myself, what's going on here? Is this a nonprofit that's helping the underprivileged, or is this a nonprofit that's being helped by the underprivileged? because it really looks horrendous out there. And the nonprofit doesn't know any of these people. They don't recognize the people. And yet I recognize the people's faces. I recognize their setups on their streets. And if I saw a picture, I could probably tell you where they are. But not this nonprofit. They didn't know anything. And then more investigation tells us that there's a strong likelihood that $20,000 of public funds was used to renovate the kitchen at the nonprofit. So suddenly it's starting to stink to me. That's the word, just stink, when they don't seem to really be looking to help the community. They'll look at the community and see what's going on and recognize it, have a feel for it. But more, even more, I got back in that letter from the director a solicitation that they should be rewarded with more contracts to do outreaches like they're doing in other communities, as if our community was showing some signs of nonprofit success at making people get along with each other and improving the hygiene conditions and the respect for people. Not at all. So that's why I think it's important to begin a conversation in the neighborhood council to start to ask questions. Why is it like this? And who are the people that are responsible? Not just taxpayers, because we didn't bring this on ourselves, but somehow things have just reeled out of control where accountability is not being held for anyone living in the streets. Accountability is not being held for nonprofits. Accountability is just, it seems to be sliding off the shoulders of everyone. And I just want to hear conversations about accountability. I think we need to know more about the nonprofit functioning in our community. And I believe it attracts people. And the director said in the letter that they don't attract people. I don't understand that. How can you run something that's meant to attract people to provide services, but yet you don't attract people? So it's a little confusing for me. Meaning it's just convoluted. But here's what I think the answer. So I addressed Sean's part of the conversation. To Catherine's part is, what do we do about it? I think we need to understand who our nonprofits are that are supposed to be interacting with the most horrendous problem of our community, which is the street scene. And what is their interaction? What does it look like? And what are their goals? And where are they getting their money? And what contribution, whether it be good or bad. I had a homeowner call me this week, ranting and raving about the filth around one of these nonprofit scenes. And, you know, I didn't disbelieve it. I didn't see it myself, but it shouldn't, no one should look at a nonprofit and say it looks awful. It's a horrible place for the community. It's supposed to be a nice place that brings satisfaction to the community. That's not what's happening. So
I'd like to throw something in there, Jonathan. So I'm currently trying to get to the bottom of a situation with LASA. All right. Now LASA isn't, LASA is a joint agency between the county and the city of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Housing Services Authority. And I was on site on Friday, October 7th in our neighborhood when Tiffany Zatunian, our field deputy from CD2, and Caro Tarosian, the chief of staff for CD2, council member Krikorian, now the president of the city council, were at a cleanup in our area, a major cleanup, which we're getting probably often, but not enough, because the moment the trash is swept away and people are moved temporarily in order to remove trash that's been properly noticed, they're back, or someone's back within a day or two. So at that time, I was on site at this cleanup, and where I spoke to Curtis Delbar, our senior lead officer, was there. There were probably 30 people there from the city, LA Sanitation. There was a gentleman painting over graffiti. And I also met two people from the LA Housing Services Authority. Tiffany introduced me to one of them, a guy by the name of Francisco Bayardo. And I spoke to him and I said, I am in touch with several of the people who, occupy the space. I talk to them, I help them. I've been trying to get ID for several of them. I give them food on the condition that they bag their trash and give it to me for removal, or that I'll pick it up. And, you know, several of them need medical attention, et cetera. So I'm connecting them to resources because I feel that, first of all, I think it's the right thing to do. And secondly, it will help them get on their feet and move to someplace other than on the street. So when I explained this to Francisco Bayardo from LASA, and I said, there's one young guy over here who's particularly in a bad way. Would you be able to go over and talk to him? It was probably less than 100 yards from where we stood. And he said, yes, he would. I said, you know, I'll check with him to make sure he's, you know, available to speak to you and willing to speak to you. He's been a little bit service resistant, but I think if I ask him to, he will. Francisco gave me his card. I went directly over to the young homeless man who's, I'll keep his name out of this, and told him, would you be willing to talk to this guy? He, you know, you might, he can provide resources or at least some direction. And the young man said yes. So I immediately called Francisco and left him a voicemail to come over. I texted him at the same time to give him a clear description of the young man. And the young man confirms that Francisco Bayardo from LASA never showed up that day. So a couple days later, I emailed Mr. Bayardo and described him what happened. I said, you know, you never showed up. What happened? What changed? And I didn't get a response from him. So I've taken that up the chain, and I'm going to figure out what Francisco Bayardo does for his paycheck, because he's not responding to me in this great moment of need for a specific person who was within his sight line from where we stood and who agreed to meet with him. And, you know, I don't know how often this sort of thing happens. Perhaps this is an anomaly, but when the need is so tremendously great, when the funding for these operations are so huge, when you ask for something specific and you're told that, yes, it will be done, and it's not done, and then you're not given an explanation why, this to me is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the problem that we're dealing with. And I find it outrageous, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And I've already escalated this, and I'm going to find out what's going on with Mr. Francisco Bayardo. Maybe there's an explanation, but I'm not sure why he is unable to provide one. So, and that speaks also to the frustration I hear from Sean and from Jonathan, which I share, because we see such negative impacts. And anybody who tries to protect their property is, you know, deemed to be heartless or lacking compassion. And I find that to be such a false argument, which is repeatedly made. And and we can't have so many rights for one group of people and so few for others. And people have a right to the peaceful enjoyment of their homes. They have a right to not be infringed upon in this way. So, and most of the people, at least in my neighborhood, are doing everything they can to be helpful. But there comes a time when, you know, enough is enough. So I hear what you're saying, Jonathan. And I agree that we do need to discuss what we're going to do about this. I'm not sure what that is, but I think people have to be held accountable. I personally want to see what the funding is. I find that the LASA method of, I was told when I brought this to the attention of someone that I should file a request online. I think it's called IHOP, which I've done a number of times before and never gotten any results whatsoever. And there's a restriction on finding out how a person is. Has this person even been seen by anyone at LASA? You're told, no, this is a privacy consideration. We can't tell you anything. And to me, that that shields a multitude of you know, possible sins. So I basically deal directly with homeless people as much as I can so that I can help them directly, given that there's just such a failure of agencies from what I've been able to see. So those are my thoughts. If anybody has any suggestions on what we can do to hold these nonprofits accountable, I'm all ears. And that's what I have to say.
I think the idea of holding I mean, it's funny because you go to LASA's website and they go about their, they talk about their mission, and their first about their values is accountability.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother, that's like a whole nother ball of wax. I think on something a more of a smaller, more generalized, or something that's a little bit over a macro level, I think that we should probably work on the idea of, let's try to figure out ways to maybe help our community, specifically with the people that are looking to help. And like kind of taking a step to the sideways, Jonathan, with respect to the person that wrote that letter that you received back, are you willing to disseminate that here, or can you forward that information to me, or maybe have an offline conversation about this? Because I'd like to get some more information about that, because it doesn't sound like, for someone who's supposed to be doing the work, the charitable work, it doesn't sound like they're doing the charitable work and for their own. It sounds like it's more for their own charity, for their own charity versus the charity of themselves versus the charity of the community.
Have a conversation afterwards. I think it's a good idea for the board to take a look at this letter. As I said, it's from back in July. I think
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's a nonprofit operating in our community, and it's a nonprofit that I see every sign. How do you say it? A red flag. Every red flag I see is up, and no one's asking any questions, because it's like hands off. As Tess said, there's an inherent criticism that a person is a bad person if they're asking or they're implying accountability of anything having to do with this unsheltered situation. I don't buy into it. I just think we have to talk like civilized people. We'll agree or we'll disagree, but it's still a conversation. It's certainly not a food fight. So the point is, I think that there's a problem. I see Tessa's got a great idea. We need to understand more where the financing is coming from, because if you follow the money, you usually get a lot of answers. But I also think that we need to understand this letter. I asked, there was an exchange of letters, and I was specifically after cooperation. In other words, a dialogue as to what are the problems. I was invited in to have a tour, not by the writer of the letter, but rather I would receive a tour with other people who regularly tour the facility, which was insane to me. And I wasn't about to do it. But what I do think is of interest to us as a community is to find out exactly what the experience is of a unsheltered person who goes there, if they're going back. Well, I mean, how does this work? How does it work that everything looks so hellish out in the streets, and yet there are showers and food for plenty? And it just makes no sense to me. There's such a breakdown between the services and what we see as a result. And literally the communication is just horrendous from the nonprofit, from the executive director at the time. I don't know who's the director now. But anyways, yes, I'll share the letter. You guys take a look at it. And I think it's just important. This is a government entity. When it's nonprofits, we need to understand where the money's coming from and why it looks the way it looks. If there's so much kindness and money being spent, so much kindness being dissipated through this nonprofit. I mean, it's just, there's something wrong, something acutely wrong. That's all I can say. And when I heard about, or I saw evidence of the kitchen renovation, and the dollar amount of the salary being offered.
Okay, let's be real. $65,000 as a full-time
to
salary.
85,000.
Okay, as a full-time salary in Los Angeles can barely afford you housing here. Like, that's not an unreasonable salary in this day and age.
A teacher's salary, an average teacher, the median is $92,000 a year, without including the pension that raises up to $120,000 per year. That doesn't mean that teacher can afford housing in Los Angeles. So there's a point of the conversation that, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's not a lot of money. On the other hand, it's a nonprofit. And just exactly in exchange, this is a created position. It isn't a position that's taking someone else's. This is because the executive director, who was being the executive director, didn't want to be executive director anymore. If this person started the nonprofit, there's a responsibility for a nonprofit to keep their eyes on the road as to who serves who. So that's the point I'm making.
And I agree with that. I agree with oversight, but let's
just
not
asking
conflate
questions.
$65,000 to $85,000 as a full-time executive director of a nonprofit is not an unreasonable salary. And renovation of a kitchen that provides food to homeless people or people in need of food is not an unreasonable expense. Now, what that amount is, if it is an unreasonable amount, maybe, I don't know. But simply renovating a kitchen is not derelict of their duties. Like, if they're using that kitchen to provide the services that the nonprofit is providing, that's an essential cost. So
I'm okay with
I
it if it's
agree.
transformational. Is it transformational? Do you see how wonderful it is out there on the streets?
I don't see how terrible it is. In all honesty,
Really?
I go for
Catherine,
walks every single day.
It's
It
terrible.
is not a complete hellscape. Is it bad? Does there need to be something done about it? Yes. But
Tess, has Catherine gone out on one of those cleanups?
No, I
Okay, why
encourage
don't you invite her?
Yeah, come to our next cleanup, Catherine. It is on November 12th. It is our,
I
yeah.
understand that there are issues, and I am not denying that, but you're acting like we live in some dystopian hellscape. And while we need to make improvements, while we need to have better connection between services and the people that need them, I am deeply uncomfortable with the way that some people at neighborhood council, both on the board and off, talk about this situation.
And what makes you uncomfortable precisely, Catherine?
I think that there is a tendency to just say that everything is terrible and ignore the fact that there is work being done to try to improve the situation. And yes, that work is not enough yet, but like, it's just often condescending and without compassion. And I mean, the idea that you were opposed to being invited to tour the facility with other people that come to tour the facility. Are you serious? That somehow is a problem? Like, you know what? I will stay on this meeting so that we continue to have quorum, but I think I'm done with this committee.
I'd just like to say, I've lived in this area since 1971. I'm at my current address since 1976.
Mhm.
I can honestly say, now, I'm not a doom and gloom guy at all, but I can tell you this is the worst I've ever seen it in this community since 1976, since I've been in this area. I hear what you're saying, Catherine. I really do. And it's awesome and I desperately want to have compassion. I really do. And I want to have compassion for the people that need it.
Sean, you do. Okay.
Oh, I know. But in the same breath, there's also, there's also people that are, is it fair to say that there are people that need this compassion? Absolutely. Is it fair to also say that there are a lot of people that do not deserve the compassion because they're just scofflaws and they just want to, I have people coming onto my property, destroying my property. We have people breaking into cars. Now, are these the same people that need help, or are these the people that are the ones that just do not want any help and want just to be this kind of the plague on the community? I don't know. I don't know every single one of them, but I can tell you that there is no question that there are people that need help and there's people that are probably taking advantage of the system. What the percentage is, I don't know. But I can tell you that we don't treat animals as bad as we treat some of the humans in the city. We would never allow anyone to treat a dog like this. Why do we treat humans like this in our own cities? The apathy, or not necessarily apathy, that's probably not the right word, but the inability for our city just to simply throw money at a problem with no oversight is unconscionable. We really need to make sure that the money that's being doled out by our taxpayer dollars, my property taxes are insane. And it's probably not even near as bad as it is for other people. But my tax dollars are not being used correctly if it's just being thrown away just for various programs. I would love to see how these programs are truly benefiting our community. I have no problem making sure that those monies go to the right people. So I hear what everyone's saying. And I think as a neighborhood council, I don't think it's unreasonable for us to ask the questions that we're asking. And to Catherine's point with respect to $65,000, $80,000 for the director of a nonprofit, I've dabbled a little bit in the nonprofit world, and that's actually probably a little bit more on the low end for a director position. Just my personal opinion, because I actually wanted to get into this realm. Well, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here. I truly feel that as a neighborhood council, we definitely need to ask the questions. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, I agree.
I don't think that we need to be so far left or so far right. And I'm not saying in terms of politics. That's not my point. I think we need to kind of be in the middle of all of these thought processes and seeing what's going to benefit us as a community, making sure that the things that are working well and we support them. And the things that are not working well, we shouldn't support them. And we definitely need to raise our hands and raise our voices to say that, here's money that's going to this particular program. And I'm not saying about Jonathan's program, I'm saying in general, find out where the money is going and making sure that the monies are being spent properly. I don't think that's unreasonable.
That's perfectly reasonable. And we have every right to know what's happening with taxpayer dollars. I will point out also that LASA is coming under fire. A community impact statement was filed by the Board of Studio City Neighborhood Council requesting LA Homeless Services Authority to report on their food distribution programs that serve folks experiencing homelessness and the ways in which they can mitigate future food waste. This motion is in reaction to a CBS2 investigation, which followed LASA workers for months and discovered some teams throwing boxes of food meant for distribution to the homeless in the trash. And that is extremely problematic. So that is, at least one neighborhood council that is activating on this. So, Jonathan, do you have any recommended actions?
Well, just before we move forward, Catherine,
sure.
does that make sense on what I said? Does that align a little bit more with your thought process?
I mean, I am not saying that there aren't issues. I am not saying that there shouldn't be oversight, but when we have people coming in and complaining in certain ways, it distracts from actually trying to address the issue. When you have someone who's like, how dare they invite me to tour the facility with other people that routinely tour the facility? Or,
Catherine, I think you're missing.
$65,000 is an astronomical salary. It makes me wonder if they it just distracts from the actual issues when you're complaining about things that are unrelated.
I get what you're saying. And I think that might be an advent of just the sheer frustration, and you can't fault anyone for being frustrated at what they've seen in the city, especially with its decline in recent years. And maybe that's just a way of conveying. And again, I'm not defending anyone. I'm trying to be open-minded and seeing what everyone's saying and maybe interpreting a little bit on my own. I think that as board members, I think we're kind of left to do a little bit of interpretation. I mean, but I don't think you can fault anyone for their frustrations and how they vent said frustrations. I don't think there's a bad bone in Jonathan. I've met Jonathan. He has every good intention. And
I think, Sean, to just add to that, Catherine, I think you somewhat unfairly mischaracterized his comments, but Jonathan can certainly speak for himself as to that. So sorry, Sean, go ahead.
And that was it. I mean, I don't think, while whatever your views may be, Catherine, I respect them and you're certainly entitled to them. And I would never say otherwise. I don't think you being done with the committee is an appropriate move for you. I think that if you have that voice of dissension and it does bother you, I think you being in here is paramount, because it adds balance. Because if you feel it's a one-sided situation, you leaving doesn't help that. You just further the problem. And I'm not.
And I appreciate that, but I also need to maintain my own, you know,
and
you can't
absolutely
pour from an empty cup. And so
No.
I don't want to participate in these conversations anymore on this council. I find it incredibly frustrating. And I feel like the vitriol is not productive. And I feel like the personal attacks are not productive.
Wait, can I just ask one question? When you say personal attacks, what are you referring to? Because I might have missed that, and I apologize.
I mean,
it's not. There's no
obviously
personal attacks towards you. You're not saying that, are you?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
no one has attacked me personally, and trust me, they would hear about it if I did. I think that had happened, but I just.
And I get what you're saying, Catherine. I really do.
There are individuals that have a history of attacking people unnecessarily and repeatedly, and so it does, honestly, I will totally admit, it colors a lot of my perspective of what they say going forward, because they harp on certain things based on incorrect information, and it makes me distrusting of what they say.
Is it possible that they're explaining based on their experience? I mean, you can't fault anyone from experience, recounting experience and then telling their own truth. It's not to say that I don't think I've ever.
Your own truth. And I think we're belaboring a point that I don't want to continue on. I will stay on this meeting to maintain quorum, but I am done with this conversation.
Okay.
And I will not be
that.
participating further.
Well,
okay.
Thank you, Catherine. So, you're an intelligent person. So you and I don't always agree, but although I think we agree more than you might think, has there been vitriol on this call?
I am done participating in this conversation. Thank you.
Okay. So, Jonathan, you have your hand up.
I'd like to make clear that a personal attack is an attack on one's person. I did no such thing. Haven't talked about anybody. I think it's very reasonable for all people in government to always look for accountability, for explanation, for contribution or non-contribution. That's all this is all about, is looking at something and trying to understand what are the causes of the suffering and how can it be alleviated. And until you're willing to take a close look at exactly what's going on, in this case, there are nonprofits that are working, that are probably in a better position than any group of neighbors to influence some of the outcomes, maybe. If I write a 4-page letter to somebody and that person responds to me by saying I can come in and meet with their staff, it's not a go. It's not a go at all, especially when this is a dialogue between two people. There's a way that we follow through with an intelligent conversation, and it doesn't include delegating it off to someone else without good reason. Or in any case, back to the issue is I do think we need to understand more what's going on about the money. I noticed that there's an unwillingness to talk about money sources. And that makes I find that weird to say the very least, because I believe in transparency and I don't believe in being emotional about stuff that has to do with the community. It's not about people, it's about people's conduct. So that's a big difference between a personal attack and business, is we're talking about conduct and choices people are making that influence the quality of life in our community. So with that said, I think some of the possibilities are to know more about the money, maybe get some disclosures, because normally you have to wait to the following year for the public disclosures. Maybe we could ask as a neighborhood council, what are the sources of funding? And we could perhaps learn on a second tier, maybe exactly what the experience is of people who are living in the streets of our community, on what it's like for them to eat, what questions are asked, what forms do they fill in, how much does a nonprofit actually know about these people? Because became apparent to me that they don't seem to know hardly anything about who comes. They certainly don't recognize them. So, I mean, that just threw me. I just didn't expect it. So I share it with you that those are red flags to me. And a red flag is not necessarily, it's an alarm. A red flag could mean that there's a fire hazard and nobody recognized it. Or it could mean somebody's being deceptive. I don't know what's going on. I'm no professional in nonprofits, but I do know when something doesn't feel right, doesn't look right, doesn't sound right, needs some questions. And I think a community has an obligation to have a relationship with nonprofits who are supposed to serve, not thrive. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And
well, thank everyone for all their comments. And, in spite of, Catherine wanting to leave, I mean, I appreciate her comments. I appreciate all of your comments. I mean, I think dialogue is what's most important. And it's unfortunate. I'd like you to stay. Like I said, I think that you are a valuable piece to keep balance. But, I respect your decision. We'll go from there. I think we should carry on. It's probably gotten a little bit long in the tooth for this. So let's kind of move on if you don't mind.
all right. Thank you, Sean. Let's see. So I think somebody wanted to maybe comment on this, but that's not gonna, I don't think that person will be able to join this conversation. The motion or the item number 9 on the agenda, but I think it speaks for itself. Moving on to item number 9, discussion and possible vote. The motion, the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council urges the City Council to adopt a nonprofit exemption of $200,000 in revenue or $500,000 in assets instead of the proposed threshold of $2 million. This change aligns with the IRS tax filing system and would be an easy way to allow any nonprofit that files a 990N or a 990EZ to gain exemption. This change also reflects the current, the current San Francisco ethics ordinance, and there's a link there. The current recommendation of $2 million in revenue is too high and would exempt the vast majority of nonprofits in Southern California. Only 16% of Southern California nonprofits have revenues above $1 million. So an exemption set at twice that amount would be a great impediment to transparency. Motion to be submitted as a community impact statement to council file number 220560. Do we have a first?
Sean.
Okay, second. I guess I can second it if Catherine doesn't wish to. So any discussion on this explanation, questions or comments?
We had a conversation about this because I noticed that we had the CIS from October 18th about this. I just wasn't sure what we were going to be touching base because we did already kind of go over this on October 18th.
We didn't go over this specifically. This is a bit more detail. In fact, we specifically, it was alluded to, but not in any detail, Sean. So
okay, I know we had a of everyone. It was a unanimous decision. I just didn't know.
Well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give this its own CIS because I think it's worthy of it and important. So
okay, all right. I just need a little bit more information about specifically what you were talking about because I looked at this and like, wait, this to me was familiar, and then I misunderstood. Having said that, I'd just like to find out a little bit more information on this specific to this. So I apologize. I'm not up to this.
What would you like to know?
Well, I just wanted to know more information. It talks about 60% of the Southern California nonprofits have revenues of over 1 million or above 1 million. So, and now they want to increase it to 2 million. And we're looking. That's
a proposal. So
okay.
Go ahead.
And so are we looking then to bring it down to 200,000 or
Yes.
revenue and up to okay. I see.
In other words, this would make it more transparent for more nonprofits. And currently there is, I think, an exploitation of that threshold that this would change.
And I guess playing
Catherine?
the.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm happy to answer or try to answer any questions you may have.
No,
Okay.
I'm good. Good, Catherine, jump in.
Any questions, Catherine? You're unmuted. Are you?
I guess by her saying she's done with this conversation, she's
Well,
literally done with everything.
No, I mean, she's still here. She said she would stay until the end of the meeting. So.
Or maybe she's staying just specifically
Okay.
for votes.
She has her hand up. Okay,
Oh,
go ahead,
yay.
Catherine.
Woohoo!
Are you, I haven't changed any settings, Catherine. You're asking to speak when.
Oh, she's gone. So she might have, like, the internet might be the internet. So she might be.
Okay.
And technically, her not being here, we are no longer in quorum.
That is true. We can continue.
7:52.
Hold on.
FYI.
Yeah, 7:52. We can continue the discussion, but we would not be able to vote. So unless Catherine comes back, and maybe she will. Oh, here we are. Hang on. She just raised her hand.
Yay.
Hold on. Hang on. Let me promote you to.
There we go.
Promote to panelist.
I do not know what happened. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can, but you raised your hand, then you fell off, and I'm promoting you to panelist. Stand by.
Okay. Yeah.
Internet being the internet again.
Okay. All right, so we lost Catherine at 7:52, and she rejoined at 7:53. Okay.
Yes, I
Okay.
apologize. I was not actually trying to make a statement or a point in that. I just
yeah, I didn't think so. You were pretty
my
clear.
internet also decided I was done. No, I think that I generally support the idea of more reporting. I do worry just not knowing what the percentages are, because we say only 16% are above 1 million. What does that lower threshold encompass? Because with income that low for a nonprofit, I don't know how much of a burden the reporting process would be.
Fair enough.
Concern.
Fair enough. I was discussing this with somebody who I wanted to bring on about this, but that person is stuck in another meeting, who had done a fair amount of supporting research that was very good and credible to me, and who's much more fluid on this item than I am. But I'm convinced of the legitimacy of this, and I have put it forward as a result. So, but it's a good question, Catherine. How much of a burden does this put on reporting? But it would be, it would be easy to identify any nonprofit that files one of these nonprofit forms, 990N or 990EZ, to gain exemption. It would if it corresponds to the IRS tax filing system, then it would be automatic. And these exemptions have been used to shield lobbying activities, and that's the reason for this proposal.
So this is just to, okay. So for
It's
my
to
understanding,
increase transparency.
Okay. Well, I'm all about transparency, but it also if we were looking to lower the revenue totals and lower their asset totals, is it fair to say that you might be able to attract more unscrupulous people? Is that a fair statement?
No.
Okay.
Any questions, Catherine, or members of the public?
I guess, so is this just going on top of the other CIS we've passed on this council file?
Yes. I would say it's an addition. And the reason, Catherine, is because I pulled it up here, the one that we passed on the last month, is I believe that this nonprofit component deserves its own CIS.
Okay. So I guess that begs the question with the first one, should we actually be submitting something that says we are for if amended?
Let's see, this is the municipal lobbying ordinance unanimously approved. Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council supports changes to the MLO regarding vote rules elections committee according to section this should be addressed for these reasons, lack of oral as amended. That's a good question.
Or if amended. So when you're in the council file, like the CIS system, you know, you have that
Yes.
support if amended,
Yes,
or oppose unless amended, like
exactly.
those options. So I guess my confusion is, you know, we are supporting Nithya. We are reaffirming our previous stance.
Yes.
So, but we're also asking for an amendment to the motion.
You know, that's actually a good point. Excuse me for one moment, please. Catherine, can you take over the meeting? Somebody has arrived early for a meeting. I'm going to mute myself for one moment. I apologize. Okay. I apologize. I will mute my.
All right. Well, Tess, as of 7:58 p.m. is going to step away from the meeting for a moment. We do not currently have quorum, so we will pause the meeting until our chair returns and we have quorum again. Sound good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Or we could still talk amongst ourselves, though, correct? Not specific. Oh, well.
This is discussing action, so I'm hesitant to do that without quorum present. Like with the last one, there was no action being discussed.
Oh,
I just don't want to get in trouble.
No, I get that. That actually makes good sense.
On pause.
And we're back. Oh, dangerously close to being back.
All right, 7:59, a whole minute.
Oh, she's still not muted yet or unmuted. You're still muted. You're muted.
I'm back.
There we go.
Okay, so. Okay. Where are we?
So I'm just wondering if the previous motion should really be, we support if amended, encompassing this change that we're requesting. If we choose to request this, I feel like if we submit something that says we support Nithya Raman's motion, and then we also submit something separately that says support if amended, it's going to be confusing.
You may be right. So
because you're asking to support something with the CS support. Now we're reaffirming that support. But in addition to that, we're also asking that you amend one of the items in said.
Okay, hold on. I got it.
My recommendation would be if we choose to move these forward, we basically merge them together for the actual general board meeting, so that one is, instead of there being two separate ones, we have one that says we reaffirm our motion from our CIS from October 21st. We strongly support Nithya's motion, if amended, to include these.
Okay, I'm taking that
That
down.
that would be, if we choose to move this forward, if we agree that we want the $2 million threshold, my recommendation is we only submit one CIS at a time.
That makes sense to me. Let's see here. I'm looking at, okay. Well, okay, but they're two different council files. Item
Are
number,
they?
yeah, 221232 is the Nithya one, and this is 220560.
I thought the Nithya one was 0560. I'm looking at item 6 and item 9,
Wait,
right?
sorry,
Or-
okay, wait, hold on. Item 6 is 22050, you're 220560. You're right. Item number 7 is 22132. That's the ethics reform section 700 of the charter. And then, yes, okay. And then item number 9 is 220560. So, okay. So, good move, Catherine. So let's combine these. Shall we vote to combine them, vote to amend to combine these two into one?
I would second that.
All right. All right. So combine items combine items number 6 and number 9 into one. Number 6 and number 9 into one. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council reinstates its position in favor of the motion that we filed on October 20 to support, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also, how do you want to append it? We also urge the city council to adopt a nonprofit exemption and then leave the language as is.
Yeah, so I think we say we support the motion by Nithya Raman if amended, and then we explain what amendment we're asking.
Okay. Okay, so go again, say it again.
I would just say, like, the part about we reaffirm our position in favor in the CIS submitted on October 21st, and we support the motion introduced by Councilmember Nithya Raman if amended, and then add in the explanation of GTLNC urges City Council to adopt the following nonprofit exemption, blah, 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 blah.
Okay. So going back to item number 6, we agreed on the language there. Okay.
I think maybe just keep all that language, but say if amended, and then tack on basically the language from 9 as the amendment requested.
All right. Okay, so then proposed reforms, okay. City's lobbying laws, such laws. Well, but okay, when you say the words if amended, Catherine, we're supporting in item number 6 what she has proposed, not supporting what she's proposed if amended. Do you understand?
I see what you're saying.
So because we don't have an amendment proposed, we are simply supporting her proposal.
Okay, so then if we are proposing an amendment, what are we proposing an amendment to, if not to her motion?
The amendment it proposed is item number 9.
I know what item it is. I'm saying,
Okay.
what are we proposing to amend?
It's an urge to adopt. Does adopt qualify as amending?
Well, you're saying that the current recommendation is 2 million. So we're asking them to change what they are currently recommending. And is what they are currently recommending what Councilmember Rahman is requesting they adopt?
Say that one more time.
So,
Okay.
so we're requesting that there's a change to what
Yes.
the recommendations are.
Yes.
And Nithya Rahman, Councilmember Rahman, has not proposed a change to those, right?
No, this item number 6 and item number 9 arose separately. All right, because item number 9 was pre-existing before Nithya Rahman took this matter up. All right, so as to whether it is part of her proposal, I do not know. All right, but it was pre-existing.
Okay, so looking at her proposal right now, she is moving that the city council request city attorney in coordination with ethics commission prepare and present a draft ordinance to adopt the reforms regarding the city's lobbying laws found in council file 220560. Okay. She is
Yes.
requesting certain modifications to strengthen the laws.
Yes.
So one of the things that she is requesting is eliminate the expansion of exemptions beyond what exists in current law.
Mhm.
Does that apply to this right now? Is this exemption expansion beyond what currently exists in law?
This number 9 is an expansion beyond what currently exists. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And-
So then I think we are basically saying then that we support this and we want to highlight specifically that portion of it as something that's particularly important to us as a neighborhood council, is her eliminate the expansion of exemptions beyond what exists in current law.
Okay.
So I still think it should be one thing, but
Okay.
it's not support if amended, it's support. And specifically, GTLNC feels strongly that Nithya's motion to eliminate the expansion of exemptions is beneficial, and here's why. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but the fact is, I don't know if she has specifically pointed to these exemptions. All right, so
So you mean that you're talking about this in going from 2 million to the 200/500, correct?
yeah, this pre-exists Nithya Rahman taking, putting forward this motion. All right, so
Can I ask where it came from?
what came from?
Where
Number
this
9?
Yeah, where did number 9, where did it
There are a number of neighborhood councils that have been working on this together, and it has come about through my discussions with other similarly oriented neighborhood council board members. So it's come from another neighborhood council. And I was hoping that one of these people would come forward. So
Is it unreasonable to ask maybe we table this until we can get more information? I mean, I'm not opposed to this, but I'd like to get more information, especially if this is something that
yeah, you know
pre-exists.
what? I would say okay to that, because I don't want to say I don't want to proceed. Well, I'm confident in item number 9. Okay. But if we're going to append it to item number 6, I would want to be clear what Nithya Rahman's specific position on this is. I don't want to make any assumptions, But since she has put forward the motion to, adopt the Los Angeles Ethics Commission's proposed reforms, and she's made a broad general statement, this is from her own press release, to revise such laws to provide greater transparency. I don't want to point to one in particular that pre-exists this motion of hers as her supporting or not supporting when her statement is broad.
In her motion say that she wants to make modifications to eliminate the expansion of exemptions beyond what exists in current law. So if what we are saying here is to eliminate expansion of exemptions, then we are aligned with what Nithya has proposed.
Okay, that's fine. Has she put these specific numbers in her proposal?
She has not put those specific numbers. I'm just reading from the motion. It says, with the following modifications to further strengthen the laws. Item number 1, eliminate the expansion of exemptions beyond what exists in current law.
Okay, then we can append it or not. Because if we emphasize this is important to us and we put in these numbers, then she'll at least have those guideposts from us.
What we would want versus what she may want, because we don't know her position on this technically either,
well,
correct?
I mean, we're largely in agreement, I think. So it's just a matter of the thresholds.
I guess, are these thresholds being proposed by us?
Yes.
Ostensibly, are they the current law? Are they the current thresholds?
Or what are the, to Catherine, so what currently is the law right now and how does it stand? Where are the numbers specifically to the laws, what I'm understanding?
Okay, we can pull up the ethics code right now and look. So that is linked from your agenda. And let's see. Okay. So threshold of 6 million. Okay.
I see the San Francisco ethics ordinance on there. And where am I looking for the agenda? Because I don't see it. And I apologize.
You're looking for what?
What you're looking at. I want to be able to look at the same thing you're looking at.
Okay.
Oh, there it is right there. Sorry, it's just up a little further. My apologies.
Okay, so I pulled up the ethics reform and let's see here. So the answer, Catherine, is I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at this list and I'm admit I'm not seeing the reference to the 2 million. I did look at the original, like the ethics report document that's in the city council file, like at the bottom of those attached documents. And it mentions the 2 million, it's on page 12 for 501c3 organization exemptions, but it doesn't, as far as I can tell, state what the current exemptions are.
You said that was on page 12?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm looking at, okay.
I see that.
Okay.
And when was this dated? This is May 5th of 2022.
Yeah, this is the ethics report. And then I'm going into attachment A to see what it says about the changes. Okay, I'm not seeing.
I do see where other, I was looking at the other neighborhood councils, CISs, and they do reflect that they are wanting the 200 to 500. So we're just aligning based on what the other neighborhood councils have already gone through in terms of their CIS. Is that correct?
Yes. However, let's see here. We have someone who can answer some of these questions. Jamie, are you there?
I'm here. Hi.
Excellent.
Hey, Jamie.
So a few questions have been asked that I can't answer. Is this current $200,000 threshold in law now? That was your question, Catherine?
Is the 200,000 receipts or 500,000 in assets the current exemption cutoff?
No, right now the current exemption only applies to the Part A, which is essentially if you're a nonprofit that primarily does work that serves the indigent by providing them free or significantly reduced services. However, the other thing that's also in play is that right now there's also the definition of a lobbyist is determined by if they're getting paid, but also doing the 30 hours a month quarterly. And because that definition has been kind of abused and the new MLO would go to a payment only model, that's why we felt it was really important for the nonprofit exemption to be lowered quite significantly from the suggested 2 million, because there are a number of nonprofits that aren't really what you would think of typically as a nonprofit that's like just, serving poor people, but nonprofits have been used to filter for business interests throughout the city historically, commonly, and that's why we're intent on trying to lower it. I will note that the new motion from Nithya Raman actually brings it down to a $0 exemption, and that was something that I had originally asked for. The reason that I've been fighting for the 250/500 in assets one was because I was anticipating a Nori Martinez council presidency and didn't think anything lower than that would move through. I think that there is room for spirited debate on this issue, but I will say that the San Francisco Ethics Commission currently has their exemption for nonprofits set at the IRS standards of the 250/500 standards. And I think San Francisco does a good job.
Okay.
Sorry,
I'm
that's a lot of
going to be
information.
totally honest. I support this in concept. I'm having trouble with how to put it into a CIS so that we make it clear that we support Nithya Raman in her motion, which you said, Jamie, would basically make the threshold 0.
It would make it 0, but
more strict.
It would make it 0, but the exemption for nonprofits serving the indigent with free or significantly reduced cost services would still apply. So if they're doing things like feeding the poor, clothing the poor, legal services, medical services, anything in that nature, that would all be exempt. What wouldn't be exempt is something like, I'm trying to think of like a good example. Maybe like a homeowners association that's formed under a nonprofit that has, because like a really good example would probably be something like the Bel Air Association, which is technically a nonprofit and does like a lot of land use appeal work. I believe that fundamentally people should be able to track that kind of activity. Like you should be able to see that it's happening. And so that's why lowering it's so important. You've also seen that various business groups have had nonprofits form to advocate for their business positions. So you could have like the build with strength, which is like a concrete one, but really it's just the interest of the concrete business advocating for more concrete in the city, things like that. So that's why the nonprofit thing's wonky and tricky.
So if the exemption limits were lowered to the 200K in assets, or the 200K in receipts, 500K in assets, would that override the exemption for nonprofits that serve the homeless and indigent, or
no,
would that be
so
an either or? If you meet one exemption, you're exempt.
Exactly that. It's either or. So if you serve the indigent, exempt, or if you have below this amount of revenue, exempt.
So Jamie, I think that this is all really good. And before you came on, we voted on and passed another motion in support of Nithya and her, her proposed reforms to the city lobbying laws. And what's happened is we're discussing right now, well, clarifying this item number 9 on the agenda and possibly merging it with item number 6 on the agenda, since they're both on the same council file. But Catherine, do you feel that this should be, item number 9 should be amended for clarity before we merge it into number 6? Or do you feel that it's clear enough now or not?
I think maybe we should go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's clear. I was just a little bit confused about if we are asking for a change to what Nithya proposed, or if we are accepting everything Nithya proposed. And it sounds like we are asking for a small change in that she is eliminating the monetary cap exemptions entirely. And we're saying we'd accept monetary cap exemptions in line with the IRS.
Well, but further to what Jamie just said, since this was originally drafted when Nuri Martinez was president, and the thought was that she wouldn't accept anything, zero, this could be potentially reduced to less. Jamie, don't you think?
I have a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, do we know what Krikorian's thought is now, specifically on this issue?
Not at all yet. Okay, given that every single time they've tried to do lobbying reforms, it has literally died in committee, I still think that this is going to be a fight regardless. My personal preference would be for the $0 exemption. That was what I originally, when I made comment at the Ethics Commission. However, I can live with the reduced cap. Like, I think that the reduced cap is a good compromise, and I'm the kind of person who thrives in compromise. That said, there are a number of other neighborhood councils that did ask, instead of the 250 cap, they did ask for a 0 cap. Lincoln Heights and Woodland Hills would be 2 examples of ones that said, we don't want any kind of nonprofit exemption except for the indigent clause. So you would be, if you wanted to just do a straight $0, that would be totally within your rights. If you wanted to do something lower than what the IRS cap is, that would also be perfectly acceptable too. I could strongly see, like, that if a nonprofit's like a smaller org, like makes less than 100K in revenue a year, I can understand the need to like not kind of put them through the rigmarole of lobbying. But they're also not the kind of org that's necessarily going to hire a lobbyist or have an in-house lobbyist. But that's why this wonky question is important, because what we've seen in the past is that if there's a loophole that can be exploited, it will be exploited. And that's why I think it's really important that what Nithya made as a motion is not set in stone. The really important thing is to ask that the 2 million thing is too high. Whether you think $0 is appropriate, 250, somewhere in between, whatever it is that you guys decide for your NC is what matters. But the most important thing is that 2 million basically makes it a free-for-all for lobbyists to hide themselves within nonprofits, and that is not good for transparency in the city.
And I totally agree.
Yeah, I somewhat agree. And I like the idea. You did say 250, but on our motion, it says 200. Is it 200,000 or is it 250,000?
Sorry, it's 200,000 in revenue, 500,000 in assets. Sorry.
I just wanted, no, I just want some clarity. No, I get that. I just wanted clarity. I think that's a good number. Oh, go ahead.
Can I make a suggestion? What if we say that we support Nithya Raman's motion, including the modification she's requested, and we strongly oppose the $2 million exemption limit, would support a $0 limit, but would find acceptable aligning with IRS limits.
I think that makes sense.
That's great.
That's probably my personal position, and I think I'm probably going to be changing my template going forward now that I actually think that a world exists where maybe it's possible.
Yes.
It seems
think-
based on your conversation that a 200 or IRS limits seems like a more palatable scenario versus a $0 limit with everyone included. Is that kind of what I'm gathering?
My concern is that you have nonprofits that are good actors in this space. For instance, good government groups, right? Who I frequently work with on ethics issues. And I don't want to set the MLO up for a fight that would lead it to possibly not getting passed because the nonprofit restriction is too narrow. So my thought is that perhaps Nithya is asking for a 0 to be able to then bargain in good faith back to the IRS level. But I don't know. I'm not in her head. I don't know. It's not a conversation. I haven't had an extensive conversation with anyone on her team specifically on this point. But I what you're asking for is great. I love this idea. It's fantastic. I love it. It's very reasonable.
Actually, Jamie, it's your idea. So, but I work with Jamie and other people like Jamie to, discuss these things and bring them forward, things that, we think are important. So I appreciate you coming to clarify this, Jamie. So, but and Catherine, that's a good idea. We support Nithya Raman's motion, including the modifications she's requested, and we strongly oppose a $2 million exemption limit. We would support the $0 limit, but would find acceptable aligning with IRS limits of 200,000, 500,000, sticking with the original language, the language of the original motion. That sounds acceptable to me and addresses all of these variables. Catherine?
I mean, it's my idea, so yes, I like it.
Yeah, okay. And Jamie, there was a question about where does this number come from? 16% of the Southern California nonprofits have revenues above 1 million. That's from the Secretary of State website?
I got it from an internet search that was on nonprofits in Southern California. I could probably find the link if I searched for it, but it was
it was
just in my research.
The question of the source, and I couldn't say. So, all right. Are we okay?
Yeah, I also mostly just wanted to know what percentage were, above the IRS limits, to see, are we lowering it to that cap? Would that include like a large percentage, or would it be like, oh, we've gone from 15 to 17%, that sort of thing.
I might be able to, give me 1 second. I think I can pull it up. I had a chart. Okay. So this goes up, the data that I have goes up to about 250. So it's not perfect, but it's about, what is that, 60, about 66% make 250 or lower.
Okay.
And at the $100,000 level, it's about 45%.
Okay. So this would be increasing reporting, but probably not overburdening actual small nonprofits.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
All right. So I think we can go with this. So to combine items number 6 and number 9. All right. So I'm going to draft this while we speak. All right. So, correct me as I go along. The Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council reaffirms its position in favor of the motion we filed on October 21st, 2022, to support the motion introduced by CD4 Council Member Nithya Raman to adopt the Los Angeles Ethics Commission's proposed reforms to the city's lobbying laws and to revise such laws to provide greater transparency as set forth in Council File Number 22050. We support and the GTLNC feels strongly that that Councilmember Rahman's motion to eliminate exemptions specifically. Hold on, where did I put that language? Sorry, we support, and the GTLNC feels strongly that Councilmember Rahman's motion to eliminate exemption thresholds specifically is important, but we would be willing to accept, and you know what, I overwrote the language. What did you say, Catherine?
So
Here we are. Sorry, I just found
basically-
it. Sorry to interrupt. I just found what I thought I had deleted.
Mhm.
We support Councilmember Rahman's to include modifications she's requested, and we strongly oppose the $2 million exemption limit for nonprofits. Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council would support $0 exemption. No, sorry, $0
yeah, a $0 exemption threshold.
but would find acceptable aligning with IRS limits of $200,000 for, hold on, $200,000
In revenue or
in revenue or
500,000.
$500,000 in assets in alignment with the IRS tax filing system.
I think that sounds great.
Okay, very good. Shall we vote on this?
Sure.
Move to a vote. All in favor, Sean,
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Tess is a yes. Very good. I will go back and get it directly from the audio, since this became a very complicated, but I think we've simplified it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie, for coming in and providing
yeah.
a little color. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This is like my passion project. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm determined to actually make the city a little bit better through 8 gajillion neighborhood councils pressuring them. So I appreciate you being part of the 39 that have gotten on board with this.
And thank you, Jamie. You are making things better. I appreciate this very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the next item, new business and future projects. Seeing none, hearing none. Old business. None. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:34 p.m. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. We're dark in December. And I thank you very much for being here tonight. Catherine, thank you for your participation as well. And I will see you guys next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a
Have
good
a
night.
Have a good
evening.
one. Good night, everybody.